Have you ever wondered what happens when a music legend goes head-to-head with some of the most powerful figures in the industry, and then mysteriously vanishes before he can finish what he started? Prince wasn't just a performer, he was a one-man revolution, determined to reclaim power for himself and for every artist who dared to challenge the system. But as whispers of shadowy deals and scandalous parties began to emerge, another name kept weaving into Prince's story: Diddy. It's a connection few realized existed, and one that may have held far more secrets than the world will ever know. Today, we're peeling back the layers on Prince's battle for artistic freedom, Diddy's complicated history with his own label, and the swirling mysteries that still follow them both. Strap in, because once you see how deep this really goes, you might never look at the music scene the same way again. Prince Rogers Nelson arrived on the music scene as an undeniable prodigy. By the late 70s, he was already raising eyebrows with his unstoppable creativity. He didn't just sing, he mastered instruments, composed and produced, and carried a confidence most new artists could only dream of. From the start, Prince wasn't eager to be someone else's product. He wanted to shape his destiny on his own terms. In those days, a contract with a major label was the holy grail for budding talents. After all, it promised big budgets and massive distribution, enough to transform an everyday dreamer into a global sensation. But even then, Prince noticed a glaring truth. These deals weren't exactly about equal partnerships. Rather, they were about controlling a rising star's music, image, and finances. For many young performers, that was the price you paid for fame. For Prince, it was a trade-off he planned to challenge. At first, these concerns simmered quietly under Prince's rising stardom. He was climbing the charts, winning awards, and racking up fans by the millions. Yet behind the scenes, he studied his royalty statements and realized something was amiss. Why were executives in expensive suits getting the lion's share? Why did he feel like his artistry was theirs to commodify at will? Prince was determined to find the answers, and that determination set him on a collision course with corporate giants. Even at a young age, he showed an almost clairvoyant grasp of how record labels could shape, or shatter, a musician's career. By the time MTV launched and music videos became the new frontier, Prince's place as a style icon was cemented. He had unique flair, from flamboyant outfits to mesmerizing dance moves, and it all made him a star. Still, fame never erased the questions nagging at him. Was it possible to be famous and free, or was the music business itself built to keep artists under someone else's thumb? It seems surprising on the surface. Prince, a rock-funk visionary who preached about creative autonomy, and Sean "Diddy" Combs, a hip-hop mogul known for lavish parties and unstoppable hustle. What common ground could they possibly share? For one thing, they both moved in the circles dominated by Warner, a major music conglomerate. But it went deeper. Prince fought tooth and nail against the stranglehold of labels like Warner. He believed that these corporations routinely cheated artists out of their rightful earnings. Meanwhile, Diddy, with his own label Bad Boy Records, forged deals that gave him, and by extension, his partners, major control over artists' work. To Prince, it must have looked like the same story, just wearing a flashier suit. Rumor has it that Prince even tried to alert younger musicians about how the system really worked. He'd watch from afar when artists signed one-sided contracts, squandering their creative freedom for a quick advance. And if anyone represented the face of big-deal music contracts, it was Diddy. That's not to say Diddy lacked talent or business acumen. His success was undeniable. But Prince's circle buzzed with talk about how Bad Boy Records often left performers in precarious positions. So, while Prince was openly campaigning against exploitative practices, Diddy, consciously or not, seemed to personify them. This underlying tension only grew stronger when certain rumors came to light. Prince wasn't a fan of hush-hush gatherings, where lines blurred between legitimate business deals and questionable antics. He believed that the industry's seeds of corruption sprouted in spaces where, behind closed doors, stars and moguls struck deals they'd never share in public. To this day, people still can't stop talking about the time Diddy allegedly hosted a blowout party at one of Prince's properties. The curiosity stems from an intriguing detail. Prince himself never showed up. If you knew Prince's style, enigmatic, but usually hands-on, it made the whole situation even stranger. Why let someone else throw a massive event at your place if you're not around to supervise? Insiders suggest that Prince, always cautious, might have been uneasy about the type of freak-offs Diddy was famous for. Diddy's events were legendary for their over-the-top settings, their superstar guest lists, and yes, rumors of behind-the-scenes extravagances that ranged from borderline decadent to downright wild. If Prince had any inkling that these parties involved questionable activities or manipulative power plays, it would make sense that he'd steer clear. One story claims that nobody at the party was allowed to bring personal security into certain zones, a highly unusual rule for top-tier celebrity functions. That alone stokes speculation that secrecy was paramount. Did Prince already suspect that Diddy's brand of entertainment might spiral into something he found morally unacceptable? If so, it would explain why he offered his space, but refused to participate. The event only highlighted how differently they approached fame. Prince used his platform to fight for artistic liberation. Diddy leveraged his brand to cultivate an aura of unstoppable glamour. Even if the two men never openly clashed, people close to Prince said the boundary was clear. He wanted no part in the brand of fun that overshadowed the real issues of artist exploitation. Prince eventually decided to confront the system head-on. He declared war on the very concept of a label owning an artist's intellectual property, music, image, or even stage name. And that's how the infamous slave era was born. The word scrawled across Prince's face for the world to see. It was a dramatic, very public protest against what he considered modern-day servitude. Years earlier, he'd tried a more diplomatic route. He asked to tweak the terms of his contract, reasoning that if he was paying for his own production, distribution, and creative direction, he should own the masters to his songs. But label executives disagreed. They held up legal documents that said, in essence, "You signed here, so the music is ours." From Prince's perspective, that was basically an admission that the company treated him, and all their artists, as moneymakers first, creative souls second. Still, Prince was nothing if not persistent. He switched his name to an unpronounceable symbol, a radical act meant to sidestep the label's control over the name Prince. And every time he accepted an award or made a public appearance, he used the spotlight to rail against the very people writing his checks. Corporate powerhouses saw it as unprofessional or even reckless. But for Prince, it was about shining the brightest possible light on an issue that had long been cloaked in shadow. He also did something most artists wouldn't dream of. He threatened to re-record all his old albums, effectively creating a rival catalog that he could market himself. The audacity of it shook the music world to its core. Many artists quietly cheered him on, eager to see if someone with Prince's star power could expose the underbelly of record label dealings. Others whispered that he was painting a massive target on his back. After all, major labels had dominated the industry for decades. They weren't about to let one rebellious singer shift the entire power dynamic. In the final years of his life, Prince made a move that seemed like a perfect fit for his quest. He partnered with Tidal, the streaming service partially owned by Jay-Z. On paper, it looked like a partnership that aligned with Prince's long-standing desire for greater artist autonomy. After all, Tidal marketed itself as the platform by artists for artists. But the relationship quickly got murky. According to Prince's estate, Tidal began streaming more of his albums than they were legally allowed to. Documents suggested that only one album had been cleared for an exclusive 90-day window. Then, almost overnight, there were multiple Prince projects on the platform. To make matters worse, Tidal claimed it had both written and verbal permission to do so. Prince's team shot back, alleging that some documents looked suspiciously backdated. The dispute escalated into a lawsuit, leaving many to question the sincerity of Tidal's artist-first claims. Jay-Z, for his part, insisted that he had an agreement in place, but the estate insisted otherwise. Conspiracy theories flourished. Was this a genuine misunderstanding or an intentional overreach by a service that wanted Prince's legendary catalog to draw in more subscribers? For critics of the industry, this debacle once again validated Prince's caution. He wanted a platform that would treat creators fairly, not replicate the same exploitative patterns. If Tidal was indeed circumventing agreements to push out more Prince music, it would be just another chapter in the saga of major players ignoring an artist's explicit boundaries. And guess who happened to be very tight with Jay-Z? Diddy? So, the circle closed in yet again, linking these figures through tangled business moves and contested claims. As Prince's career rolled into its later years, he embodied a clean-living lifestyle that left fans stunned when the news broke of his sudden passing. He was known to be meticulous about his diet. Many say he was vegan and rarely touched alcohol. The official story that he'd OD'd on counterfeit medication laced with a potent synthetic substance seemed wildly at odds with his image, but the strangeness didn't stop there. Reports surfaced that Prince had been in deteriorating health in the weeks leading up to his death. He canceled performances, made at least one emergency landing for medical reasons, and even hinted that he was in some sort of danger. A cryptic post on social media read something like, "Just when you thought you were safe." And during a final public appearance at his estate, he reportedly told people, "Wait a few days before you waste any prayers." Why would he say such a thing? Was it a spiritual message or a warning that he suspected something was coming? No one knows for certain. Speculation circulated that Prince had recognized he was in someone's crosshairs. Maybe he believed the same machine he'd fought for so long was tightening its grip, determined to silence him once and for all. Fans pointed to the odd detail that he was found in an elevator, the same contraption he once likened to a negative force, or, as some put it, the devil. The coincidence was too eerie for many to dismiss, and as investigators probed the circumstances of his passing, they concluded it was an accidental OD. For skeptics, that neat official explanation left too many questions unanswered. Prince wasn't the first, nor was he the last, to speak openly about a system he believed was rigged against artists. Before him, Michael Jackson had famously called out certain executives he felt were exploiting music legends, himself included. Later, Kanye West would launch social media tirades about unfair contracts, comparing the music industry to a modern slave ship. In each case, the pattern looks strikingly familiar. A powerhouse artist accumulates enough influence to start exposing shady deals, only to encounter fierce backlash. Sometimes it results in lawsuits, contract entanglements, or ostracization from mainstream spaces. Sometimes the consequences are even more tragic. Why do so many high-profile performers eventually confront the machine? Maybe it's because they gain enough clout to see the fine print for what it is. Or maybe, once they realize their brand is unstoppable, they feel emboldened to speak up on behalf of less-known artists who can't risk a career-ending controversy. Prince stood shoulder to shoulder with these figures in spirit, each sounding the alarm about an industry that too often prizes money over meaningful collaboration. Diddy, in many ways, represents the other side of that coin. He stands as the entrepreneur who thrived within the system, forging alliances with major labels, growing an empire, and launching countless hits under his watch. To some, he's the ultimate success story, a savvy businessman who outsmarted everyone else. To others, he epitomizes the exploitation that Prince denounced. Big money taking advantage of raw talent, then leaving those artists in the dust once the spotlight shifts. Even now, years after Prince's passing, new theories and revelations continue to surface. Did his very public crusade for artist autonomy set him on a collision course with powerful interests? Was his friction with label executives, like those associated with Diddy's deals, only the tip of an iceberg? And what about his battles with streaming services that claim to champion musicians? The truth may never fully come to light. Prince was an intensely private individual, and many of his final moves remain shrouded in enigma. Meanwhile, Diddy continues to navigate lawsuits and controversy, further fueling debates about whether he's just another cog in a bigger corporate machine or an architect of the very system that keeps artists in line. It's also worth considering how all of these threads, Prince's activism, Diddy's deals, Jay-Z's streaming disputes, tie into a broader narrative about the music business. Are we seeing random incidents or glimpses of a grand design that ensures large corporations maintain control? In so many of these cautionary tales, it feels like the more an artist fights back, the more precarious their position becomes. Ultimately, Prince's stand wasn't just about him. It was about every artist who's ever felt shortchanged, sidelined, or silenced by towering entities that treat music like a commodity rather than an art form. And yet, as we've seen, any rebellion against this carefully guarded status quo can provoke unexpected and even chilling outcomes. When we look at how Prince's legacy tangled with figures like Diddy, someone championed for his business savvy but dogged by reports of exploiting those beneath him, it's tempting to see a clash of principles: the unwavering believer in creative freedom versus the mogul playing by the industry's most profitable rules. Where that leaves us is open to debate. Perhaps it leaves you with a nagging sense that something was off about Prince's final days. Or maybe it compels you to take a closer look at the entire music machine. One thing's certain, Prince's voice still resonates. He warned us time and again about the illusions spun by record labels, the hidden agendas of streaming platforms, and the masked intentions of even the most charismatic industry insiders. Now the question is, were we really listening? Or are the same forces that once targeted Prince continuing unabated, just waiting for the next big star to step out of line? Let us know your thoughts. Do you believe Prince's crusade for artistic ownership made him a target? Were the powerful alliances that Diddy forged part of the very machine Prince fought against? Drop a comment and let's keep this conversation alive. Because in the realm of modern music, the line between success and subjugation might be thinner than any of us ever realized.